You're listening to The Standard Podcast. Eye-opening for your ears.
สวัสดีค่ะโบสาวิตรีนะคะ This is We Need To Talk Podcast Talk Show ภาษาอังกฤษสำหรับคนไทยที่ใช้ภาษาอังกฤษค่ะ Hi you guys, welcome back to our show and thank you so much for listening. Guest ของเราในวันนี้เป็นแขก VIP เป็นแขกผู้มีเกียรติที่โบไม่คิดไม่ฝันมาก่อนเลยว่าจะได้พูดคุยด้วย I'm super excited and it's such an honor for us to have her here on our podcast today คุณใหม่สิริกิติยาเจนเซนค่ะสวัสดีค่ะคุณใหม่
สวัสดีค่ะ
Thank you for being here. It's such an honor. And I know that this is your first interview.
Yes, it's my first interview and I'm nervous myself. So thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. Okay, so let's see. This is what we already know about you. We know that you were born and raised in San Diego, California in the USA, and you mostly lived there all your life, but now you're back in Thailand for good?For
long term. For long term. Yeah.
And we also know that you are a government officer. คุณใหม่เป็นข้าราชการกลุ่มงานวิชาการอนุรักษ์สำนักสถาปัตยกรรมกรมศิลปากร or the Fine Arts Department, which is a part of the Ministry of Culture. And we have heard that you are so passionate about what you do and you work so hard on it and it's very inspiring.It's
very exciting for me and a lot of my friends in the States. When we talk about what I do, it's hard for Americans to understand because the history in the United States, you know, it's about 400, less than 300 years old. So a lot of our heritage sites are natural sites, which in Thailand, you know, Thailand's very interesting because the history extends over 2,000 years old and it's layered. It's very layered. You have Ayutthaya, you have Sukhothai, but it's not just that. Beyond that, there's Theravati, there's prehistoric, there's Lana Kingdom, Lantan Kingdom. So beyond the borders that we see today, there are kingdoms that existed concurrently. And so you have to understand things that things don't exist. It's just Sukhothai ended and Ayutthaya began. You know, those two periods actually overlapped for quite a while. So it's interesting.
To be honest, I didn't even know about that. And I'm sure some of our listeners didn't. So see, just the beginning of our show, we're already learning a few facts. But before we start talking about all of those facts about you that we already know, let's time travel back a little bit, back to your childhood, to where it all started.
Yes.
San Diego, California, where you grew up. What was it like growing up in San Diego?It
was very good. You know, to be honest, I feel more of a New Yorker than I do a San Diegan because I spent my formative years in New York City from all my 20s. And so I think I maybe have a short-term memory, maybe I have a bad memory. I don't know which one. But my years in San Diego were not as clear as my New York years. But I just remember it being it's just the little things that were wonderful. Like I used to live near the beach, so I remember just...walking to the beach with friends and I would forget something at home and I would just run back like 20 minutes and then I would come back and it was just days spent on the beach. Like best memory is just like my best friend at the time and we would walk barefoot on the train tracks on the cliffs overlooking the ocean. We climbed down and I just remember us running and jumping into the ocean and this is something that we're doing in let's say an afternoon on a Thursday which nowadays it's like at the time I don't think I appreciated it, but now I appreciate it a lot more because it's simple. So when you're young, you want things that are more exciting. You want things that are complicated. You want to travel all the time. You want to meet people. You want to have all these accomplishments. But looking back now, I think that those simple moments and those little things, like just sitting on the beach and being able to not be concerned about if project deadlines or, you know, the city, if there's traffic, if I'm going to reach my destination on time. It's just those little moments on the beach where you don't have to worry about anything and go into the beach. It's what made San Diego really awesome. It's very relaxing and simple and sincere and genuine.
And the perception that a lot of people have from the media of San Diegans are very laid back and very chill and very surfer type. Is that true?
We are.
Did you surf?
I surfed. My father is a heavy-duty, hardcore surfer, so I'm just going to be honest that I don't know if I was a wimp. I'm not a wimp anymore,
Yeah.
but I think at the time I was kind of a wimp. And my dad is one of those tough guys that thinks that if you want your kid to grow up, you have to push them throw them.
Into
He used
the
to throw
pool?
me into the pool. And so my best memory is just he would make me surf even if I didn't want to.
Yeah.
And he said, you can't, he actually said to me, you can't be scared of everything your whole life. Mm-hmm. And so even now, I think that as a person, even if I'm scared of something, I've skydived, I've hang glided, I've done half marathons, and I'm scared to death, but I still do it. And I think it comes from that when I was younger, and then I'd be forced into situations that made me uncomfortable. Surfing is so scary.
Yeah.
Because you go in and a lot of times it depends on how well you know the ocean and how confident you are in yourself as an individual. So a lot of times when waves suck you under, the best thing you could do is just look up and wait and be calm. Because freaking out is the worst thing. And I remember being in Hawaii and just being terrified. And I was not young. I was 15. So I was terrified, and I remember seeing this wave coming, and I thought, this is not happening. I like my life. I like my life, and I don't want my life to end now. So I started paddling away to go away, and then I feel someone hold onto my leash and drag it. It was my dad. He pulled it over, and he looks at me, and he goes, "Don't be a wimp."
Oh my gosh.
He pushed me out. He was like, "Do it." And it's never a lot of things I feel like surfing especially or any sport or anything you do, a lot of things that hold people back are fear. And that fear is usually what will mess people up. So surfing, yes, I have done it.
But you don't quite enjoy it that much.
I enjoy it. I enjoy it.
You do.
It's just you can enjoy something and still be scared of it, I think.
I think the part that you're scared sort of drives the adrenaline to make it a bit exciting.
It is. And in San Diego when I was younger, every kid surfs. When I would look down the cliffs, I would see 8-year-olds and 12-year-olds with surfboards everywhere. It's a very common, I took surf PE.
Yeah?
Not surf PE, what do I call it? Surf camp. I did surf camp. I was the only girl in surf camp.
How old were you?
I don't even know, 12?
Aww.
12, 11, 10.
Yeah.
So I did surfing I did it off and on.
Yeah.
Not very well, but I could say that I did it.
Yeah. So as a child, what would be the thing that get you lectured by your parents the most?
Well, I'm quite naughty. I'm still bad.
Really? That is so unexpected.
No, I mean, I'm really nice, but I'm even nowadays, I'm prone to saying whatever I think in my mind. Mm-hmm. I don't have a huge filter. And even nowadays, someone asked me the other time if, do you remember me? I met you at this training not too long ago, and I was this and that. And instead of saying, "Oh yes, you're so wonderful," I responded, "I don't know you. I don't remember. I'm sorry."
I want to see the look on this person's face.
And so I'm just a very honest person. I've always been extremely honest, and I don't say things I don't mean. And it's just, I think that when I was younger, I was really well known in the family. They would say that we should keep a book of everything I say, because I used to say the things that I can't even tell. If I told you the stories, I think I would be embarrassed.
Now I'm curious.
So I like to joke with people a lot. I tease people a lot. Mm-hmm. Even when I was a kid, I teased people a lot, and I said whatever I wanted. And so even at this age, I'm more refined. Mm-hmm. I'm more clever, but I think that I still get in trouble for the same exact thing. So as a kid, they would say, you need to be more circumspect, I suppose. And I actually think that sometimes what you say has an effect on the way that people react. So something that for you is fun in the moment, you forget about in 5 minutes, most of the time people keep it and they mull it over for days, and it's something that you can really affect how someone feels about themselves for 5 minutes of fun. So I think nowadays I'm a lot better than what I used to be. I still tease people though.
So if we were to run into your high school friends and ask them about you, what else would they say about you besides, you being the teaser?
I've had people ask me this question, and it's funny. I haven't really changed them. I mean, I've changed. I want to say, you don't want to say you don't change because everyone wants to have evolution. But a lot of my friends who haven't seen me in a long time will say that, like, you know, I was very goofy in school. So I was always the kind of joker. I'm very, very goofy. I still am.
Yeah.
And things don't kind of bother me. I kind of joke about everything. I'm never serious. Mm-hmm. And so they would probably say that. And I'm still exactly like that. That's the issue I had here. Like, I'm never serious. And people would get upset.
Because they took you seriously, right?
They take me very seriously. They think I'm very serious. But, you know, yeah, they would say that I'm very funny. Even when I took theater in school, I was always placed as the funny characters.
You took theater?
I took theater, and I was always placed as the funny character. Uh-huh. And they would tell you at the same time that I'm only like that with the people I really know very well, because I was very reserved and very shy. So I was very, very, very shy. So even I'm much better now that I have to be in front of people a lot.
Yeah.
But I still have that element of being reserved.
Can you tell us about your best friend when you were in school or college, or even your current best friend?
My current best friend. I have a couple close friends. My closest friend in college is we studied in Paris together. And, you know, we come from different. She was a business person at NYU, and I came from a history, more creative side. And we get along because we are the ones that kind of stood away from the group. We're very goofy, and we never had to worry what we had to say around each other, because that's what true friendship really is, right? You don't have to worry, and we joke about everything. We used to call each other the goof troop.
Aww.
And when we really like someone, we would say, you're part of the goof troop.
Aww.
And one guy's like, I'm not. And I'm like, that's very offensive because it's a very good group to be part of.
Yeah, I just extended you an invitation to my group. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, like her and I were the type of humor, the best way to put it is like we love daddy jokes, like puns. And like I have a couple of good daddy jokes. And I have like a little collection that when I go to parties, I want to impress people.
Can you tell us one? To impress me. We're at a party. You're trying to impress me with your daddy joke.
Yeah, I got it. I got this one from a show, and I was so impressed by it, I actually used it like 5 times. What do you call a wave that a tiny surfer rides?
A little wave?
A microwave. I think that's really good.
Yes.
So we used to have all these daddy jokes we'd tell each other, and we would travel together, and we have little inside jokes. And it's just the friendship that comes where anything that goes on that you always forgive yourself, each other, no matter what. So we're very close friends, even now.
Yeah. I have one of those. And I think everyone needs that friend that you could be yourself and be goofy with.
It's not easy to find. Like
right?
It's especially as you get, it's like finding a boyfriend, you know? But it's more important than a boyfriend where you have to find that connection.
Yeah.
And it's about being at the right place at the right time, the right personalities. You have to be, the same kind of individual, same values.
Yeah.
So I compare it to like when you're trying to find boyfriends, you know?
My
girlfriends, whatever.
My friend and I call each other soul sisters.
Yeah.
Because I think that's where we connected, because we sometimes just look at each other and we just get each other.
Yeah, you get each other. You have the same humor, and like sometimes I'll tell the same jokes to some people, and they look at me like I'm really weird, and I don't understand because I think I'm really normal, but. And I do this thing now where I said to my coworker, I said something I saw her face contort, and I was like, 555 plus.
So, out of curiosity, do you guys look up for these jokes, or do you come up with them yourselves?
Well, we actually looked them up, and we have. I think it's like a competition. She sends them to me sometimes, and they have Daddy Jokes, a series on Facebook that you can kind of follow.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I look on Reddit sometimes, and, I have my ways.
Yeah.
I can't share my secrets.
Oh, because you don't want your friend to find your sources.
I don't want anybody to find my sources.
Like you mentioned, you studied about history and culture, right?
Yes.
What do you find so fascinating about these two things?
there was a reason we are what we are now. And I'm interested in almost like this root of a trajectory of growth and how we evolved as people and cultures. And as I have mentioned to you before, maybe when we talked outside or whatever, that there's a reason why today is today. And I like to kind of look at the origin of things and the evolutions and the change in how people view the world around them and how that's influenced the culture, like the art and the literature, because ultimately art and literature is influenced by what's happening around someone. Mm-hmm. And so it's interesting to see how art changes when the circumstances and when history evolves and change and takes on different forms. And so I kind of like to look at, I guess in Thai,ความเป็นมาของอะไร, like the origins and how things evolve and how we will proceed in the future. And so I think that almost why I went into a study of the history of everything and understanding why we are the way we are and how linguistics have developed and trade routes. How did we get in Thailand, for instance, in a UTI, you have a lot of or even before, you have Persians that came in on trade routes. Mm-hmm. You have Portuguese that came in and influenced Thai cuisine. Tong Yip, Tong Yod came from the Portuguese.
Really?
I actually learned about that from Bangkok Airways magazine. So not Gumsin, but...
Thank you, Bangkok Airways.
Was that advertising?
No.
But, I think that when we want to look at how to proceed in the future and how we want to better the world, we have to understand where we came from and look at the past. A lot of times that is the key to many things. So anyway, that's why.
I've heard that you actually had an internship at Yohji Yamamoto and also at Hermes.
Yes.
And these are fashion brands and designers. Why fashion? And you studied history. Why interned in the fashion field?
Fashion is a creative field. It's an art at the same time. And initially when I was doing fashion, I was looking into work as a curator and costume curating at the Met and it was part of the reason why I ended up in preservation, heritage preservation is what I call it. Mm-hmm. Because my boss at the time was the press officer at the Costume Institute. And so she had a lot of experience, and she sent me over to talk and see exhibitions and events put on by the Costume Institute. And so I actually was pursuing that as a career, but then I didn't know that heritage work and conservation was something that, because they don't talk to you a lot about that in the States. Right. I guess you don't see it as a job that you can do. But when I went into fashion, I think the reason was, to be honest, I was very young at the time. And I'm a creative person. I didn't want to work in a think tank at the time. I didn't want to. When you're young, you want to try different things before you finally choose that. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
We evolve as people, and we want to try different things and have different experiences before we set on that one path. Because we change
long-term path.
I guess, like marriage. But when we're in our 20s, we evolve so often, and none of it's wrong. It's just kind of at the time, that's how I felt that I wanted to go into a field where I could be creative and I could interact with a lot of creative people, and I didn't have the constraints of being in a think tank, which could possibly be bureaucratic and government-based. And I didn't always want to talk about politics all the time. And, I think that I just thought with that in mind, I said, let me try something different for a little bit. If I don't like it, it's okay. I can go back to what I studied. Mm-hmm. And at the end, despite fashion being very different from what people perceive I do now, there were a lot of similar elements because costume curating, for instance, is fashion. Mm-hmm. But with the Costume Institute, it's teaching you stories about the history of how fashion has evolved or the circle of fashion and how this fashion kind of tells stories about what people were thinking at the time and what was going around them. So fashion is part of history. Mm-hmm. So it's not something super drastic, actually, in my opinion.
Yeah. You're currently a government officer working for สำนักสถาปัตยกรรมกรมศิลปากร or the Fine Arts Department, which is a part of the Ministry of Culture. Could you tell us about your responsibilities and what your job entail?
Well, it's funny because when I came in, what I wanted to do and what I'm doing now is quite different than the standard responsibilities, because we focus a lot of times in conservation, we focus on the physical structure, and which is very important, obviously, and doing conservation work so that these structures can continue to live on in future generations. And so in Thailand, we have a lot of the humidity, and we have a lot of issues that urbanization and all these things that can cause issues for certain structures. So a lot of times you have conservators that go in and make sure that these structures can continue on.
Yeah.
I have a lot of interest in the things that you don't see and the feelings that people have towards these structures, the feelings that people have, how people connect, and how we can ensure continuation. So a lot of people say, I'm in conservation work. What I usually tell people is that I'm in heritage preservation. So it's just a different side of the coin. I focus on how do we ensure that these feelings and how people connect with the history and where they come from, and how do we make sure it continues on, not just with the structures, but with the sense of connectivity. So within the Office of Architecture, Conservation Architecture, right now I'm focusing on architectural history. And the things I call it that you don't see within that, the belief systems that kind of influence urban planning and architecture in Thailand, and these things that I have interest in. And so I guess that how the project that I'm working on came to be.
Which is Wang Na, right?
Yeah, Wang Na project.
And I think a lot of people don't really know what this project is about. Can you please educate us a little and tell us how Wang Na came about and what it's about?
Well, Wang Na itself is a lot of people, when I talk to them about it, it's they actually don't know what it is.
I just recently found out because I am guilty, raising my hands. I didn't know what it was, so I asked around and
Well, to be honest, I didn't really know what it was. Like, even before, I didn't have I knew what it was.
Yeah.
But I didn't know much about it, whereas now it's like I specialize in it, so it's funny how life works.
Yeah.
But, I've always been very, very interested in terms of work and as an individual. I'm interested in encouraging people and inspiring people to see things that they don't think exist and creating that connectivity through that. But the front palace, or Wang Na, is actually right now, you know where it is, right? It's in where the National Museum is. So it actually, a lot of people walk in and they don't realize the National Museum used to be a front palace.
Yeah.
It used to be a very large palace, actually, and it's one of the original structures within Bangkok when it was originally, Ratanakosin era, when it was originally constructed. And I guess to understand what it is, you have to, I'm going to go very briefly because people get lost. But the front palace is a concept that kind of descends from the concept of the Uparaja, which is an Indian concept of the viceroy, the vice king. And you see it occur in Thailand even in the Sukhothai era. But what it is that when did it become the front palace, which is actual physical structure in front of the main palace, right? And so it came in during Naresuan's period, right, where you have a front palace structure, which even in the war, if you look at old battle scrolls, the front palace will go into war before the palace. So a lot of times the front palace acts as a protector and the doors to the city, the doors to protecting the main palace and the king.
Right.
So a military force, and a lot of times it's the relative of a king, a brother or uncle, and someone who could be the heir presumptive. So in terms of Bangkok, the front palace actually had quite a large role within Ratanakosin history. As I said, it was one of the first structures, and we have different periods. Rama, the first brother, actually was the one who constructed the front palace. So you see a lot of similar elements to Ayutthaya. So I guess this project it came about, strangely enough, where I was like, I would really, really like to make history accessible to everyone. I want history not just to be in books. I don't want it just to be in museums. Nowadays, we have access to so many tools, and kids aren't necessarily reading all the time. It's not necessarily getting to everyone. So I was thinking a lot of accessibility and connectivity and continuation. That's the way I described it. And so how do we get all the books and all the knowledge that we have in, let's say, the fine arts department, which consists of a lot of academics, and we have some of the best minds within our office. How do we get everything to people in a way that they understand in light of the tools that exist now? And I thought about that for a while. And so I was like, what can I do? And so I thought about using technology as a tool because nowadays everyone has an iPhone. Everyone, when they want to, even now, it's like with podcasts. I listen to mainly podcasts more than TV.
Wow.
So nowadays people use technology and media as a way to get information, as a way to learn.
Right.
People learn how to cook on YouTube, like.
Guilty.
So I was thinking about if our goal is to continue heritage, what tools can we do to do so and not just outside of books? And so that was kind of what drove me to do this project. And I was thinking, I want people to understand what the Front Palace is. Because right now when they go there, they think it's a museum. Mm-hmm. When in fact, during, let's say, Rama IV period, it was huge. It was large. It extended into Snam Luang. Because it wasn't Snam Luang at the time. Thammasat. It was huge. It had a lot of, it was quite influential. And there was a second king who lived there at the time as well. So there was a second king, Papinkao. So there was so much history and background that I thought, like, how do I make people see what they can't see anymore? So, and that's difficult. How can you connect to something that you don't even see anymore? Mm-hmm. And so I wanted to take all the knowledge that we have and reconstruct digitally aspects of the urban plan that are no longer there. So my goal was to digitally reconstruct structures and kind of return it to, in terms of this phase, to the last period, which is Rama IV, Fifth. And then I can yonkap. And so in this way, people have access to this information, and we can kind of put it in two forms, in an inventory, a digital inventory of information and urban plans, digital urban plans, reconstructions that we can use for conservation, education, and, let's say, museum work, curating, and exhibitions. But just to have this information centrally so everyone has access to it. My goal is I want it to succeed, and I want it to succeed in the way that I want to be proud of it, and I want people to actually have access to see history in the way that I see it, because I see it as super fun.
Yeah.
History is really fun. And so I want people to look at it as something that they can be excited about and see things that they don't think exist and start talking more.
What do you see yourself doing 3 years from now?
Oh my God, I don't even know what I'm doing tomorrow. Well, I'm very certain about this path. I think a lot of people are surprised that a lot of people asked how I ended up in this field. It's very different. And I'm very determined to continue on in it. And so I think at this point in 3 years, I would like to see myself doing a lot of documentation work digitally and making sure that I'm creating much more accessibility. So it's pretty much similar to what I'm doing now, but expanding it and making sure there's a larger reach of how people can access history and connecting people more to the information we have, and what kind of changing the way that, let's say, museums, we see museums as not just something where you lock things in a room, but living museums. Something that people can go and learn and see it not as something that doesn't change all the time. So I do want to change the way people see history, museums, and how they interact with it. So it's just, that's all I can say now, because who knows specifically what you can or cannot do. We all change.
Yeah.
Everybody changes, and especially in light of all the technological and everything changes. Mm-hmm. Life is full of change. Yep. So it's all about how to adjust with the change and using the tools you have at hand and making it. And if you want this heritage to really continue, you have to really reach the people. So my focus really at this point is to continue focusing on connecting the history to the people and make sure there's dialogue. By how, I don't know yet. I mean, I know, but we'll see. I think it's going to change based on how people respond to this particular project and everything. But I'm excited. At this point, I think that I'm excited for people to see how people can change the way they view history a bit. And I'm interested to hear the response so that it can contribute to how I focus on career-wise and what I'm going to do in the future. It will influence that.
Okay. So I've heard that you're into running, biking, and
Yes.
also swimming. Can you tell us about that?
So I started, as a San Diegan, you think I'd be active from a very young age.
Yeah.
But I never did. I was not like that. I didn't start actually doing a lot of sports until I was in my 20s. And I don't know, I think at the time I just wanted to feel better about myself. I didn't feel healthy and so I didn't really do it to lose weight. Mm-hmm. I did it to kind of build a certain confidence. And where it is, I don't know. But I think, what did it start? I signed up for a triathlon.
Really? Your first time?
First time. And I think I'm an idealist. And I think that I don't... I don't really think too much. I think that was the problem. But I signed up for two things. I remember signing up for... Oh, there was two things. This is crazier. I signed up for a 15K run. And before I ran that, I'd run maybe less than 3 miles.
What were you thinking?
Yeah, I was very ambitious. Yeah. I like to think anything's possible in life.
Just like your dad.
Yeah. So I did all those things, and then I actually completed the 9-mile race successfully without much problems. Yeah. And I liked the feeling it gave me because for me, it was more about a sense of how you work. It's not even about the weight or anything, because a lot of people go in to lose weight. For me, it gave me a sense of working towards something, and it takes a lot of work to get to where you want to be.
Yeah.
And so you have to kind of tough it out for a while.
Definitely.
So I think that sports teaches you that it's never easy. In the beginning, it's never going to be easy. But if you stop, then it kind of sets a bad precedent. So it kind of gave me a certain work ethic, and it taught me a certain level of, let's say, responsibility that I think I really enjoyed. So when I was really running a lot, after, I guess I should tell about that triathlon. That triathlon I was not very good, but I completed it. So It teaches you not to quit.
Yeah.
Teaches you to continue on. And after that, I just kind of got hooked with it. And then I started, even now, I've done about 5 half marathons.
Wow.
And I'm not a good runner. I'm not a runner by any means. I do more swimming than I do running. Mm-hmm. And I'm slow. But I got much faster. But I'm not like Usain Bolt or anything. But I put efforts. And it's fun. It makes you feel good about yourself. And you meet the right people doing it. A lot of people have good work ethic who do sports. Mm-hmm. I didn't do the things I used to do, like going out or all the, when you're in your 20s, you do. I would sleep at 10 or 11 and I'd wake up. People knew me for that. Like I would wake up at 5 a.m. every morning and I would go swimming. If I didn't swim, I would run. Mm-hmm. And so during the weekdays, I would do maybe like a few mile runs, a few times a week. And then on a weekend, I would do anywhere from a 10K to a 21K run.
Wow.
And I wouldn't stop either. No matter how I didn't want to do it, I always did it. Sports gives you an ability to kind of be in the zone and be around people who are healthy and live a great lifestyle and have like a good view on life. And so it's great. I like sports a lot.
What else do you do for fun?
Besides podcasts.
Yes.
A lot of times I like to travel a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And so any weekend I'd have free, especially coming back to Thailand where I really wanted to get to know Thailand. I grew up coming back for a month or two a year, but I really wanted to see everything. Like, so on weekends, like a big activity I would do for fun is I would go with some friends and we would go on historical walks through the city. Like, I know now they have a lot of the Lat Noi walks and things, but before it was cool.
You did it first.
I did it first. And so it's fun. And that's how you learn. History isn't, you don't learn it just from books. We would walk and we actually would go into homes and we would knock. I remember there was this beautiful Chinese home near Somdet. And we actually went and it's beautiful. And I knocked on the door. We knocked on the door and they came to the door and they're like, can we walk in? Can we look at this?
And did they say yes?
Yeah.
Nice.
Well, I guess when you have policemen around, they're afraid to say that. But sorry to whoever was there. But it was fun because they said it was from the Rama III era. It was Chinese family, obviously. But we sat and talked to them for a while. And this is how you learn about the community and about people and their lives and how things came to be. And, so it's a fun activity. And a fun fact was that the family actually, one of the members of the family who no longer is with us, he used to take care of me when I was younger.
Really?
So I know the family. I just didn't know that I knew the family.
That's almost like fate.
Yeah, it was
But
fate.
You were drawn to knock on that door.
I was drawn to knock on that door. So I go on a lot of historical walks. I have nerd tendencies, so I do that a lot. Temples, I really like going to temples. Because a lot of times with mural arts, that's if you study art history in Thailand, that's some of the best places to go. Like Thonburi has beautiful UTI era temples with beautiful mural arts and things like that. And luckily, with the office I'm at, I get to see things that would otherwise be quite difficult to see. And I actually, like on my Instagram, somebody actually sent me a really nice message saying, like, you let us see things that normally would be very difficult. You take us to places that are very difficult. So, this is what I do for fun. I like to explore and travel throughout Bangkok. I just went to Mong on the train. They have a train on the weekends that takes you. And just see parts that people don't think to go to.
Yeah.
So I just like to have a good time.
Oh.
But infuse history in there sometimes.
That's cool. I mean, I never took, the historical walk thing, but it sounds fun, like the way you described it.
It's fun. It's fun.
Maybe I gotta try it sometimes.
And, people think I'm just trying to sound, good or something, but I really do that. Bangkok's fun, and there's a lot to explore and discover.
Yeah. Do you follow any trends or fashion or what social media is buzzing about, trends?
I follow food trends.
Ah.
I really like looking at Instagram for food. I think I just really, especially when I was living in New York, that's how I found out about what was going on, especially food. I love food trends. I really succumb to food trends.
Yeah.
But in terms of since coming to Thailand, I think that I haven't been I don't watch a lot of TV. Mm-hmm. So I think that I know less than I should know. No.
Have you read any good books lately? Or, you said you don't watch TV, so I was going to say or movies or series, but maybe not.
I watch some TV. I watch, like we mentioned before, I really love Game of Thrones. I was really obsessed with it.
Yeah.
I even watched YouTube videos that talk about, analyze it and what they predict's going to happen in the next season. I read a little bit of the book series, and so I'm really obsessed with Game of Thrones. But that could be from the period where I studied political strategy a little bit. Mm-hmm. So I'm interested in all the different minds and players that are involved in this show.
Yeah.
But I don't know why I like it so much. But I like that series. And in terms of books, I'm really, because sometimes I get really tired at night, I'm reading a lot of short stories recently. And there's one author I've been really into, Andrew Doerr. Mm-hmm. And he wrote a bunch of short stories called I think it was The Seashell Collector. Really beautiful stories. It's just very, very well written, really beautiful writing and kind of mythical a little bit. Not mythical, but there's some kind of mystery. He wrote a book called All the Light We Cannot See that won a Pulitzer.
Ah.
And he has a really beautiful way of writing. I've read his book and I've read his short stories and it really resonates with me. Mm-hmm. I read not too long ago East of Eden by Steinbeck, which I really enjoy because it talks about the good and bad exist in people. So it's kind of inner conflict that make an individual and that we're not bad for having these feelings, Mm-hmm. I have a couple things saved on my Kindle, but I've been a little slow to read. See, short stories are less commitment.
Yeah.
So I've been reading a lot more short stories recently.
Mm-hmm. So before we go, I'd like to ask you some of our random questions just for fun. Are you up for it?
Yeah.
So are you ready?
Yes.
If you have to choose, would you rather go back in time and live in the Ayutthaya era or go back in time and live in the Sukhothai era, and why?
It's hard because Sukhothai we don't have a lot of information about the way of life during that period. There was a lot of creative developments, but during Ayutthaya, it's quite a large period of time, over 400 years. So, it's hard to say a lot of times because during the beginning, perhaps it was more like a Sukhothai period. Mm-hmm. And towards the end, more like Ratanakosin.
Right.
So it's actually many, many different layers. And how we separate it in history is that we separate it by the early, middle, and late. And so even architecturally, it's very different. But I think I would choose and I guess a lot of people would choose this, but I guess I would choose the Ayutthaya era, the Prasad dynasty, because I think it's the period where you see a lot of the opening for a lot of the international trade. You have a lot of the Persians coming in during that time. You see less of the conflict between the Burmese and Thailand, and it's a period where you see a lot of prosperity. And that's what makes Ayutthaya very interesting. Even now, I went the other day and I thought, like, you hear stories where foreigners will come in and they would go around and they say would look out and all they could see is gold. It's a period of, especially during that period, it was a period of prosperity, and you see a lot of innovations that came in from abroad and influences, and a lot of things that we see now in modern era that comes from, Ayutthaya period, and the influences that come not just on Thailand level, but, you have the Japanese during that period, you have Chinese, you have the French that came in, you have especially the Portuguese that influence the cuisine. And, there's just so many different elements to it that make it something that I wanted to go back and see, I guess, to see how we are now.
I think just by you describing, looking out the window and everything you see is gold, I want to see that picture.
I want to see that
would be
too.
cool.
I want to see that.
If I asked you to walk into any mall right now and buy 3 things for your mother, father, and sister, and you know that they would love these 3 things, what would you buy for them?
My sister is all about food, so I would probably get her something like, like cookbooks or something related to, something that she can use in the kitchen, because she likes to cook and she really likes to eat a lot. So that would probably be on that area.
Yeah.
With my mother, I would probably get something involved in the beauty category, makeup or, things where you can pamper yourself a bit.
Yeah.
And so that's what I would go for her. And my dad, it's probably something to do with surfing a bit, something involving that.
Yeah.
I think that would kind of to go along with their different personality traits, I guess.
Yeah. Okay, last question. Is it hard being you?
Is it hard being me? In what sense? Like with who I am or in general?
In general.
No. I mean, I think nothing is – it just depends on how you view life. I don't think that everything is what you make of it. And I think in terms of, let's say, my situation in Thailand, which I grew up in the U.S. I spent almost 30 years. I spent 30 years in the United States. So when I come here and, it's just very, very different. And, these little quirks and adjusting myself and having more attention on myself, which I'm actually very shy about. So it takes a lot for me every day I have to really food, because I'm very, when you go out and there's so many people around and you have to smile all the time when sometimes you're a little stressed. So a lot of it, if it's difficult, it's in the sense that I have to really adjust in terms of it's okay to be a little nervous and being shy is all right, but you have to push outside of that box and get used to having a lot of people around or talking more or doing things you're uncomfortable with. And in that sense, it's difficult, but I don't think it's that hard. And it's exciting. Change is exciting. And being around people here have been exciting. And so I don't know. For me, I don't struggle with being me.
Yeah.
You always struggle with the little things, but the little insecurities and, is what I said okay? Am I talking too much? Did I make that joke and it really didn't do very well? And she took it very personally. 5 plus. That's how I respond to like in awkward moments here. But I wouldn't say, the answer, I guess, is long-winded answer is that it's hard in a way, but it's not in another way. But I like things being challenging. I think it's fun for me. So I guess hard, but in a way that's good. So.
Thank you so much for joining us today. And I think our listeners could see a different side of you and get to know you better on a personal level. We get to backtrack to your childhood and getting to know you when you were in school and getting to know about what you like to do and your hobbies.
Right.
And your new project that is coming up. So thank you for
joining
us. Thank you
so much for having me. It was fun.
You did a great job.
Thank you.
Clap, 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 clap.
clap, five.
ถ้ารู้ว่าเพื่อนคนไหนรักภาษาอังกฤษชอบฟังภาษาอังกฤษหรือเรื่องราวน่าสนใจของเซเลบหลากหลายฝากแชร์เอพิโซดนี้ให้เขาฟังด้วยนะคะ This is Bo Savitri วันนี้ไปก่อนนะคะสวัสดีค่ะ
The Standard Podcast Eye Opening for your ears